This afternoon, we're told, just before question time. Joining me on the 10 News desk is political reporter Ursula Hager. Ursula, this has been building up now for some time, but of course it was the Canning by-election that was supposed to be the final test for the Prime Minister. Could he turn things around at this by-election? In fact, it seems to move us on before they've even gone to that by-election.
Well, that's right, Hugh. I mean, certainly when the previous spill happened earlier this year in February, the Prime Minister asked for 6 months to prove to the public that he could, prove to the public and his own party room that he could turn things around. He was certainly given that 6 months, but we have seen in recent times the gaffes, the mistakes. Just a few days ago, we saw the Immigration Minister, Peter Dutton, make a comment there about the Pacific Islanders and climate change, which certainly didn't go down well with the public. It was expected that if another move was on, that would be held off until after the Canning by-election this weekend. But we did see a Fairfax poll, a Fairfax Ipsos poll released just today, which showed there could be up to a 10% swing in Canning. That seat is a very safe Liberal seat. A 10% swing, they would still hold the seat, but that, of course, would, if it was replicated across the country and a general election, would mean many seats, I believe up to 42 seats, would be lost. So obviously some very nervous backbenchers, Hugh, and indeed it seems that this time in particular the front bench has taken the move to the Prime Minister, that different to how it happened earlier this year.
Yeah, so in February there was a move on for a spill. One of the motivating forces behind that move was Don Randall, the then member for Canning, whose death, of course, has now brought on this by-election, which is coming up this coming weekend. He was from, it was deemed to be a Conservative side of the party. They moved the spill. No one stood against the Prime Minister at that time, and yet there were nearly 40 votes cast against him, cast in favour of a spill at that time. And at that point, as you point out, the backbenchers said, well, that's us. If there is to be a move, it has to come from the front bench, and the indications are now very strongly that it is about to happen, and it's about to be announced by Malcolm Turnbull. He has, through this period, not played an open hand. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, I think that's certainly very fair to say, Hugh. Malcolm Turnbull's is certainly quite an interesting character. He seems to have made himself sort of permanently part of the scene there, but never really getting involved in any of the conflicts that the government was struggling with. He's certainly taken on his role as Communications Minister very well, but in some ways he has really left himself out of a lot of the furores and indeed the leadership speculation that has surrounded the government essentially for the entire year. He's refused to comment on, in many cases, on whether he would challenge. Indeed, we saw that story in the News Limited papers last week where he apparently told a Liberal backbencher who asked him to come out and say that he wouldn't challenge the Prime Minister. He apparently refused to do that, saying only that would broaden the speculation about a challenge. So.
OK, now we're told that Malcolm Turnbull is now on his way. We'll bring back those pictures again of where this press conference will be being held. People turning around. There's a fair gathering there. Julie Bishop, we're being informed, went to see the Prime Minister before question time to alert him to the fact that he no longer had her support as the deputy. It was plainly going to be on from then. Malcolm Turnbull went after question time. Now let's listen to what he has to say.
OK. Well, thank you very much. A little while ago, I met with the Prime Minister and advised him that I would be challenging him for the leadership of the Liberal Party. And I asked him to arrange or facilitate a meeting of the party room to enable a leadership ballot to be held. Of course, I've also resigned as Communications Minister. Now, this is not a decision that anyone could take lightly. I have consulted with many colleagues, many Australians, many of our supporters in every walk of life. And this course of action has been urged on me by many people over a long period of time. It is clear enough that the government is not successful in providing the economic leadership that we need. It is not the fault of individual ministers. Ultimately, the Prime Minister has not been capable of providing the economic leadership our nation needs. He has not been capable of providing the economic confidence that business needs. Now, we are living as Australians in the most exciting time. The big economic changes that we're living through in here and around the world offer enormous challenges and enormous opportunities. And we need a different style of leadership. We need a style of leadership that explains those challenges and opportunities, explains the challenges and how to seize the opportunities. A style of leadership that respects the people's intelligence, that explains these complex issues, and then sets out the course of action we believe we should take and makes a case for it. We need advocacy, not slogans. We need to respect the intelligence of the Australian people. Now, if we continue with Mr. Abbott as Prime Minister, it is clear enough what will happen. He will cease to be Prime Minister and he'll be succeeded by Mr. Shorten. You only have to see the catastrophically reckless approach of Mr. Shorten to the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement, surely one of the most important foundations of our prosperity, to know that he is utterly unfit to be Prime Minister of this country, and yet so he will be if we do not make a change. The one thing that is clear about our current situation is the trajectory. We have lost 30 news polls in a row. It is clear that the people have made up their mind about Mr. Abbott's leadership. Now, what we also need to remember, and this is a critical thing, is that our party, the Liberal Party, has the right values. We have a hugely talented team here in the Parliament. Our values of free enterprise, of individual initiative, of freedom. This is what you need to be a successful, agile economy in 2015. What we have not succeeded in doing is translating those values into the policies and the ideas that will excite the Australian people and encourage them to believe and understand that we have a vision for their future. We also need a new style of leadership in the way we deal with others, whether it is our fellow members of Parliament, whether it is the Australian people. We need to restore traditional cabinet government. There must be an end to policy on the run and captain's calls. We need to be truly consultative with colleagues, members of Parliament, senators and the wider public. We need an open government that recognises that there is an enormous sum of wisdom, both within our colleagues in this building and, of course, further afield. But above all, we have to remember that we have a great example of good cabinet government. John Howard's government, most of us served in, and yet few would say that the cabinet government of Mr. Abbott bears any similarity to the style of Mr. Howard. So that's what we need to go back to. Finally, let me say something about Canning. Now, this is an important by-election, and I recognise dealing with this issue in the week before the by-election is far from ideal. But regrettably, there are few occasions that are entirely ideal for tough calls and tough decisions like this. The alternative, if we were to wait and this issue, these problems were to roll on and on and on, is we will get no clear air. The fact is, we are maybe 10 months, 11 months away from the next election. Every month lost is a month of lost opportunities. We have to make a change for our country's sake, for the government's sake, for the party's sake. From a practical point of view, a change of leadership would improve our prospects in Canning, although I'm very confident with the outstanding candidate we have that we will be successful. Now, you'll understand that I now have to go and speak to my colleagues. I trust I've explained the reasons why I am standing.
So there it is, ladies and gentlemen, it is back on again. Malcolm Turnbull there confirming he will challenge the Prime Minister for the leadership of the Liberal Party and therefore the Prime Ministership of this country. Two big questions there unanswered. It's not clear yet when a vote might take place, presumably in the next 24 hours. It's also not clear what the role will be of Julie Bishop, whether she will be in partnership with Malcolm Turnbull or possibly in competition with him for the top job. Some unanswered questions. But the main fact is the challenge to the Prime Ministership is now on. Details at 5.